All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys, the latest physique update posted just hours ago from Rafael Brandao. So, as far as we know, the Arnold Classic Brazil is still going to happen as scheduled. I heard some rumors that there was a chance that it could get postponed due to lack of competitorship, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because we've got an official competitor list that they just put out, so we'll talk about that in a second. But Rafael Brandao, one of the biggest names in this lineup. Obviously, he is a native to Brazil, and arguably he's the favorite to win in this lineup. Now, this is the latest physique update that he's posted, and I think he's posted a lot of physique updates, but out of all the updates that we've seen so far, this is A, the most revealing, and B, in my opinion, the most impressive. Now, he says in the caption that he is very depleted here, but he says no filter, just depleted, and that was the main takeaway from this photo for me, was how depleted he is, how detailed he is. We hadn't really seen much of his legs in any of the other updates that he's been posting. It was a lot of upper body stuff, but in this update you can see really a pretty insane amount of detail and separation in his quads. I mean, look at the crazy separation that you can see from the front on his legs. Now, again, it is worth pointing out here that he is already qualified for the 2022 Mr. Olympia, and this show is a qualifier for the 2022 Mr. Olympia. So whether he wins or not, he's still already going to the Olympia. That's not an issue. But I think based on what we're seeing so far, he to me looks like the best bodybuilder in this lineup. But there's certainly some other good bodybuilders that we've learned are doing this show. Now, here's the competitor list that they posted today. And granted, there's a chance that this isn't the complete list, meaning that there's going to be potentially more names added to this. This is just the confirmed names that they have at this time. And there's even a competitor that I just talked to the other day that said he's doing the show that is not on this list, Emir Omeragic. So on the list, though, they have 6 competitors: Thiago Lins, Audio, Alan Ramiro, Bondaman, Rafael Brandao, Marcelo Pedro de Cruz, Sibusiso Kotello, we're going to talk about him as well, and Eduardo Rodriguez. So again, based on the people that I've talked to, there will likely be many more than 6 competitors. But again, this is just the list that they put out today, and it is likely to change. This is likely not the final lineup. Some of the competitors that have said they're doing it, but for whatever reason are not officially confirmed, I think the total comes out to like 12 or 13. So it's going to be a lot of people that maybe mainstream bodybuilding fans haven't heard of, but there is going to be more than just 6 guys at this show for sure. So let's talk about one of those names first that was on that list, Sibusiso Kotello. He's one of the guys that has said he's doing this show very early on. He's been posting prep updates for months now, and I've been kind of following along with his progress. So him and Rafael, I would say, are the 2 guys that have been advertising this the heaviest, the fact that they're competing in this show. But this latest update that he posted, I believe this was yesterday, where he says 7 years in the making, he looks pretty damn impressive, pretty damn grainy in this update. And we'd seen from other updates a little bit of his shape, his structure, his flow. We get kind of an idea of the size that he carries. But this was the first update where I was like, wow, this guy really looks pretty grainy. And granted, this is a week out. So he's a guy that I'm looking at as a potential big contender here, because we've never really seen him against any of these guys or against any bigger name pros to really know how he will stack up. But based on how he's looking in some of these pictures, he's got to be one of the top 6 guys here. Now, another guy that stood out to me, and this is a guy that was just telling me that he was competing in the show, that was Emir Omeragic. He posted a physique update the other day that I thought looked very, very impressive. This front lat spread here, pretty young guy, relatively new pro, carries a lot of size in the upper body. The thing that I would be concerned about is the legs. I don't know how proportional the legs are going to look or stack up in this lineup, but his upper body certainly looks very impressive in this update. So those are the 3 guys that I've really got my eye on right now at this point. We're less than a week out from the show. It's coming up very, very soon. As the list changes and if more names become officially added, I'll add those. I'll update that in future videos. But right now, these 3 guys are the standout for me. Let me know in the comments below if there's anybody else that you guys know is doing the show that might not be on the list yet, or who stands out to you in this Arnold Classic Brazil lineup. Let's talk about Hadi Choopan a little bit. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the most recent update that Hadi Choopan posted, this posing video. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a recent quote from Nick Walker on one of the Q&As that he does on his Instagram story. I'm sure you guys are familiar. He'll answer a ton of questions on Instagram, but shout out to Buys and Tries for capturing this quote, because I don't go through every Q&A. I didn't see this one. But Buys and Tries does a good job, so I want to give them credit here. So Nick was quoted as saying, "I don't think Hadi gets mentioned as much because he's probably a little smaller, but he has the ability to win the Olympia just as much as I do. His conditioning was second to none, and backstage he was the most impressive bodybuilder." Now, honestly, I couldn't agree more with that statement. I think Hadi has long been very underrated. I think, in a couple of the most recent Olympias, I feel like he didn't really get very fair callouts. I think he should have been in that Brandon versus Ramy callout for the top two. I think by far, I really don't think anybody would disagree with this. By far, he was the most conditioned bodybuilder at the 2021 Mr. Olympia. I would even feel confident saying that. And I've also said for a long time that I firmly believe that Hadi Choopan, I think he will win the Olympia one day. And I think, whether he was overlooked or didn't get the greatest call-outs or whatever the case has been in the past, I think in the future he 100% has the ability to win the show. And I think Nick is correct here in his statement. He says maybe it's because Hadi's a smaller guy, but his conditioning was second to none. And I think that's going to be one of the situations where Hadi could make a strong case to win the Olympia, is if some of these other guys that are beating him coming off, Brandon, Ramy, and Hadi is as consistent as he always is, constantly sharp, constantly on point, he's going to catch these guys slipping eventually because Hadi is so damn consistent. And I think this post also brings to mind another interesting thought, and that is Nick and Hadi being compared at the Olympia. If Nick moves up a little bit, like people are expecting him to, I think a lot of people want to see him closer to that fourth or third place spot, and that would be right in the range of Hadi Choopan. Maybe we'd see the two of them compared pretty heavily, and Nick has become known for not only being a mass monster, but also having really good conditioning. I think a call out of just Nick and Hadi would be a really exciting one. And another interesting thing, and this is something that I've been saying for a while, is that Hadi works with Hany Rambod. And I know that Nick has a new coach, Dom Mustachio, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. But the coach that I would ideally like to see Nick work with, that I think would be really cool, is Hany Rambod. Because look at what Hany has done with Hadi Choopan. Look at the conditioning that Hadi consistently brings. And while Nick brings great conditioning and has brought great conditioning, I still think that Hadi's was a level above Nick's. Imagine Nick coming in with Hadi Choopan level conditioning. Nick would be top 3 at the Olympia. I have a hard time thinking anybody would be able to beat a package like that. And Hany Rambod was also able to do the same thing with Derek Lunsford, dramatically improving his conditioning last year to the point where Derek won the show, beating a guy, Sean Clarita, who won that show based on conditioning. But when you talk about these Olympia placings and you talk about guys like Nick Walker and Hadi Choopan, you can't have that conversation without this man. Hunter Labrada posting a very revealing physique update today as well. Posting a most muscular, a side chest, and another most muscular. So he had a hands on hips and he had a clasped hands most muscular. Looking huge and also looking pretty on point. Hunter has really impressed me, and I've said this before, that all throughout his off-season period, he always looks like he keeps his physique really tight. He always still looks pretty sharp. He always still looks relatively vascular, and that's something that has always impressed me about Hunter. Granted, I do think there's some body parts he needs to bring up, specifically his back. So maybe he does need to put on a little bit of size to do that, and maybe he might have to sacrifice some of that off-season sharpness. But I'm really impressed by how tight Hunter keeps it in the offseason. And I will say, I always say this, whenever Nick posts an update, Hunter posts an update and vice versa. And Nick had just posted a pretty big update the day before. I know I didn't cover this because I wasn't making a video, so I know this part of the video is late. But Nick Walker had just posted a pretty crazy front double bicep and back double bicep that a lot of people were talking about. I think a lot of people were talking about it primarily because, A, Nick's arms are ridiculously, stupidly big. But I think his waist, this is, to me, one of the tightest waists that Nick Walker has had in an update where he's showing off his crazy size. He's showing off the crazy size of his arm, but his waist looks really, really tight here. I don't think that you can make the argument that his waist looks distended or bloated. Maybe you could say it's not the best flow, but overall he looks ridiculously big, while having a pretty tight waist for a guy that's carrying the size that Nick Walker is carrying. I think that is the really impressive thing about this physique update. And I think Hunter, Hunter saw that update and said, man, I got to post another one. But that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. Just a quick one. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you did, in fact, enjoy it. Like the video if you liked the video. Click subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. And as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.